And it is this Saturday, Coffee Klatch with Heather Lofthouse and yours truly, Robert Reich. And we are delighted to be here, delighted to be back. Heather, what is on our agenda today?
On our agenda for the day, the Trump trial and what to expect this coming week, the Israel's retaliation against Iran, the fact that the Kennedy family has endorsed Joe Biden, not their own, and more. Let's go.
By the way, this is the Good Life Cafe in Mendocino, California.
Look at this plug.
Just one.
Look at this plug.
This is my mug, but I do want to get into it. Okay.
So the Trump trial in New York, the voter deception trial, not the hush money trial.
Yes, it's important because the media keeps calling it the hush money trial. It is a trial about voter interference, voter deception. If this had been simply a sexual event in Trump's history
that he covered up,
there would not be a federal crime here,
right?
Or even a state crime. This is a very important contextual understanding, and the media is blowing it.
And what is happening with the jurors? So we have the jurors, but one quit, but one left, but one's out.
You cannot separate the issue of the jurors from Trump's intimidation of jurors and the gag order. And the judge is going to have to deal with Trump's violation of the gag order. What Trump wants to do is obviously delay the trial. One way of delaying the trial is delaying the jury selection. One way of delaying jury selection is that the jurors feel pressure. They feel that their families are not safe. And why are their families not safe? Because Trump keeps on this drumbeat of, the trial is setting me up. This is all about trying to oppress and prosecute and persecute me, and the jurors are nervous, and that's what happened on last week. The jurors became nervous. It was very hard to put a jury together, and I think that's going to continue, Heather.
Well, also, it's so easy to get doxxed in this day and age, right? So we find out details. This person lives on the Upper West Side and is in finance, and people are scared. So I think people are going to leave because they are terrified for their lives and their families' lives, which is real.
Well, this is a test of our entire court system, our judicial system, our criminal justice system. I salute the jurors who have already agreed to do this. But over time, as this trial drags out, the press is going to want to find out who the jurors are, and Trump is going to want to put pressure on those jurors.
Right. Now, I've been impressed with the speed. I feel like it's moving quickly. Monday is going to be arguments.
I hope it moves. Well, it should move quickly, but again, and the Judge Parchant is intent on making it move quickly, but Trump wants to delay. Remember, everything about this trial is about Trump's delay strategy.
Right. So the other thing I wanted to mention on this, SCOTUS. So SCOTUS next week, the immunity case is still in the midst of being decided on. So what's happening?
The Supreme Court is going to hear arguments about immunity, presidential immunity. Does a president have immunity? This is absurd. Can we just make sure everybody understands going into this? This should never have got to the Supreme Court. Presidents are not above the law. A president cannot murder people while president and expect not to be.
But it was in the White
House. It's a crazy theory to begin with. Richard Nixon came up with this, interestingly, after he was pardoned by Gerald Ford. Nixon said, I am not a criminal because nothing I did was criminal. In fact, it couldn't have been a criminal because I was in the White House and a president cannot be a criminal for anything he does. This people have got to remember, this was the start of what Donald Trump then picked up.
I know, it's so scary. And didn't we learn from that?
We learned absolutely nothing. What we should have learned, Gerald Ford should not have pardoned Nixon. I mean, let's
Hello.
be clear. We are
Right.
living with that legacy.
I know. One thing I thought in terms of the intimidation of Trump this week, I think you saw, and I don't know if everyone else saw, but basically anyone that the Trump campaign has said, look, if you are mentioning Trump, you're showing his likeness, there's some B-roll of him, we would really ask that you contribute 5% of anything you make from grassroots donors up to the Trump
It
campaign.
is such a grifting campaign. I mean, this entire.
It's unheard
I mean,
of.
Trump is selling steaks, and he's selling, he's selling sneakers, and he's
Yeah.
selling this.
Bibles.
It's such
Speaking
a.
of tithing.
He is so demeaning of the presidency and what he did in terms of the office he held,
Yeah.
and even of the judicial system. I mean,
know.
it's pathetic, and it's funny, but it's not.
It's horrible. Now, one thing you put in your Substack this week that I thought was so interesting was this case that some of us saw, or this incident where this photographer retired from the Ford Foundation, and his name was David Hume Kennerly. And so tell us about that.
Well, it wasn't the Ford Foundation. It was the Institute. It was a
forgive
foundation
me.
that was for the purpose of awarding
That's
a kind of courage and leadership award to somebody who exemplified the qualities that Gerald Ford had. Does anybody remember Gerald Ford? It was he gave me my first job in government.
I know, a Republican.
And I was a Republican. I wasn't a Republican, but he gave me my first job in government. Interestingly, Kennerly, who was part of this foundation that gives this award on behalf of the memory of Gerald Ford, he left the board. And he left the board because the foundation was going to give the award to Cheney.
Liz Cheney.
And the foundation then decided not to, because the foundation presumably was worried about retaliation from Donald Trump. Maybe
and other MAGA Republicans, I'm sure.
and maybe losing its tax status and other and so Kennerly said, this is absurd. This is the courage that Liz Cheney showed is exactly the kind of courage that this foundation was set up to reward.
Right.
It's interesting, Heather. I also wrote about last Sunday's interview, George Stephanopoulos on ABC This Week. He had Chris Sununu, governor of New Hampshire, and he asked the Republican governor of New Hampshire whether anything that Trump has done, and whether, if any conviction, will shake Sununu's support for Trump. And he said no.
Yeah.
And Stephanopoulos said, well, I'm asking you a question about right and wrong. And Sununu said, it's not a matter of right and wrong, it's a matter of politics.
Yeah.
To me, that exemplified the end of the Republican Party. I mean, the complete absence of any integrity, of any courage, of any willingness to be on the side of really the institutions that made this country and continue to make this country a democracy.
And morality.
And public morality. Absolutely. I think that what I wrote is the Republican Party is dead. Under Trump, the Republican Party is over. Remember, I got my first job under a Republican president, and it saddens me.
I know, of course it does. I think it saddens everyone.
But it's also a tragedy. This country needs two governing parties. We are set up for a two-party system.
I know.
And that is, if one party is anti-democracy, and really proto-fascist or authoritarian, we can't exist as a democracy.
It's grim. I know. Well, people are fighting the fight, right? November's around the corner.
People are fighting the fight, and you are fighting the fight, I'm sure. And it is worth fighting. It is the most important fight we can possibly be in.
It is. The stakes are incredibly high. Now, what happened in the Middle East in the past, 48 hours has been very scary, right? So Israel has retaliated against Iran, who had retaliated. And so where do things stand?
Well, the issue is escalation. I mean, the Middle East has been a tinderbox for years, but are we going to see, and I think actually Hamas had this in mind, on October 7th.
Mm-hmm.
This was one of the things that drove Hamas to the atrocities of October 7th, was trying to create a regional conflagration that would consume Israel. And Israel and Iran are now in the beginning stages, let's hope not, let's pray not, of that kind of a conflagration.
Now, so when you look at the news, so many people call this modest, right? This was a modest attack. What does that mean?
Well, it's a good question. We don't know enough, but certainly the media are trying to play it as a modest attack, trying to do what the Biden administration is trying to do, and that is to contain this potentially escalating conflict.
Right.
Can it be contained? Is Iran is Israel so stupid? Is Iran so stupid as to actually escalate? If you escalate a conflict like this, what is the end point? There is no end point, and it's potentially, it could be some sort of a nuclear end point.
Oh, it's so scary. Is it stupidity, or is it power hungriness, or is it?
Well, they're driven. Netanyahu is obviously driven by wanting to stay in power, and he knows that a war against Hamas and even against Iran will keep him in power.
Right.
The heads of Iran, it's very hard to know what's driving that.
Right.
But unfortunately, we are facing, and Biden is facing. This is happening all at the same time. Obviously, that Ukraine is happening, and Ukraine is not that far away. I mean, we tend to think, well, the Middle East is over here and Ukraine is over here. No, in terms of actually mileage, they are not that far away. And Russia has an interest in instability.
That's it. Now, I want to get to Mike Johnson in a minute, but I do want to talk about these 100 people who were arrested on the Columbia University campus this week related to Gaza and Israel.
And they were protesting Israel's, Israel's killing, Israel's decimation of the Palestinians in Gaza. Over 30,000 Palestinians have been killed.
And women and children.
12 to 15,000 children. And they were protesting it, and they were arrested. Now,
on a college campus.
On a college campus, and in fact, the president of Columbia went in front of Congress and said proudly, "Yes, this is what we're doing. We are not allowing this kind of protest."
Yeah.
Heather, I feel strongly about this. I've been a professor for 45 years on and off college campuses. I believe that students should be allowed to express themselves, even with unpopular views.
Right.
How does anybody learn anything on a college campus if they are not exposed to unpopular views?
Right.
And this is the essence of what learning is about. How can Columbia justify not allowing students to protest?
I know. And also, peaceful protests. What do we do?
We're talking about peaceful protests. We're not talking about violent protests.
Right.
I mean, at Berkeley, we are sitting not inside Berkeley, but very close to the University of California, Berkeley, where the free speech movement was founded.
In the 60s. Were you there?
In the 60s.
When did you get to Berkeley?
I'm not that old. I did.
In the late 60s.
In the late 60s. I did work for Ford, but that was after. I was at Berkeley in 68 and 69.
Right. And the free speech 64, I think, is when
it was 64, but it was still going on.
Right.
And Ronald Reagan used the free speech movement as a kind of red herring, a kind of straw man to get himself elected president.
Right.
And stay governor.
Right.
And in fact, even become governor in the first place. He made those students and those student activists into the kind of nemesis of law and order. That was his thing.
Yeah. Wait, you talking about Ronald Reagan reminds me of a joke. It's a joke about trickle-down economics, but you won't get it. Oh, is that terrible?
That's really.
Am I kicked out
Heather,
of the coffee
You
clutch?
don't know this about Heather. She tells jokes, and we're going to have a joke period
Are we?
Yes, we are.
Let's
You're
go.
going to tell
Okay.
jokes
Knock,
every
knock.
week.
I don't have another
No.
one. I don't have another one. I'll spare everybody. But can we, okay, back to business and the for real, what we're facing in reality. So Mike Johnson is braiding together different things and trying to come up with a mix that he's an I mean, what is he doing? He's a magician over there. Is it going to work? Is he going to be here in a week?
He's Speaker of the House. He feels some justifiable, I'm glad he does, responsibility to move very important legislation. All the evidence is that he understands that Ukraine is running out of munitions. Ukraine desperately needs additional munitions. And he does not want Vladimir Putin to be able to expand his territory and be encouraged to go into Europe. So his position is very different from Trump's. And that is causing a rift in the Republican Party. They're covering it up. Marjorie Taylor Greene, obviously, and the Freedom Caucus, the crazies, are on the side of Trump because that's what they do. They are just loyalists. I think it's potentially very dangerous for the country, but also for even the Republicans. Because Speaker Johnson needs Democratic votes. He's needed Democrats to get and to move this package.
And he's getting them. I mean, Democrats are being pretty classy. I mean, I think. As far as these things go, I mean, they're showing up and they're not smearing.
And they're not.
I don't know.
They're not thumbing their nose, and they're playing along. They are doing their duty.
Right, that's it.
And they're doing it in a bipartisan way. And Speaker Johnson is trying to do his duty in a bipartisan way. In fact, the irony here, Heather, is we are seeing the House of Representatives, which has been the most partisan place in government, actually suddenly become bipartisan.
I know. Well, we'll see, and we'll see if he lasts.
Well, it's not clear he will. But
who's next?
Well,
walk the plank.
Because remember, he only he's down to one Republican that gives him a majority. So he's got to rely on the Democrats.
I know.
But it's
tenuous.
It's driving the Freedom Caucus, the extremist, crazy that he is depending on the Democrats.
And trying to play ball. So obviously, the Kennedy family came out and said, let's be clear. We support Joe Biden, not Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
In Philadelphia on Thursday, they made it very, very clear. In fact, even Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s brother and sister, they were there endorsing Biden. And they all but said, our brother is a crackpot. They didn't say that.
They didn't, but it was
as
pretty
clear.
Close as you could get.
Yeah.
And we did a video about RFK Jr. and what he has said in the past, getting the truth out, which is something we do at Inequality Media Civic Action. And it was taken down by TikTok and called misinformation, which is very interesting.
It was interesting because they didn't give any reason why. If anybody out there has some responsibility for TikTok, maybe you ought to let us know why you took it down. Talk about freedom of speech. Of course, freedom of speech doesn't apply to these big, massive media platforms.
Yeah. They gave us a generic note that was like, in the community, that when there's stuff, and we pull it down.
Well, that was not very helpful. So I put it on Substack. I put our video on Substack.
Yeah.
My Substack.
Yeah.
And we'll see whether people, it's very important that people understand that, number one, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has no chance of becoming president. He's there only because he is a spoiler. He's being supported by Republicans. That's where Republican money is going. Yep. Big money is going.
Also, he backtracks. He is against vaccines. He has been anti-Semitic.
He's a fringe politician and a fringe character. But he was encouraged by Steve Bannon and Roger Stone to get involved in this election for Trump.
Now, a good thing of the week, Maine has joined the Interstate Compact for the popular national vote.
Now, I want to make sure everybody understands this, because the only way of circumventing the Electoral College and permanently circumventing the Electoral College is if states that have 270 electoral votes, which is what you need to become president, if they pledge that if every other state that has the total equivalent of 270 votes will give those votes to whoever comes in as the candidate for the state.
Yep.
And that is it's ingenious, it's important. Maine has joined the compact,
Yep.
and that's very impressive.
It is.
It's not going to get there, unfortunately, by this election.
I know, but this is how you fight a fight. You push, and then when it doesn't, God forbid, it doesn't happen again, we keep pushing and then we get there.
Yeah,
right?
and it's an ingenious, very important idea, and its time has come.
Yeah.
The Interstate Compact.
And they're the 17th state. We're hoping Michigan joins. Anyway, that was good news of the week. And then I'm sure you saw this, but Caitlyn Clark, who's the rock star basketball player, played for Iowa. She was first round in the draft for the WNBA. Dun, 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 dun. She's going to be making $76,000 a year. The top pick for the NBA, the male equivalent, is making $10 million a year.
I think that is not only prejudicial and not only should not be allowed.
Right.
The Equal Opportunity Commission ought to be in the middle of this. But I think basketball itself is prejudicial against short people.
Oh.
How tall is she? How tall is she?
She's over 6 feet. I'm pretty sure.
Hello?
6'1". I don't know.
What are the chances?
Yeah.
What are the chances of me actually being a center?
Do you want?
for the
I've
New York-
always been
New York
honest with
Knicks?
you.
Yes.
It's really not good.
Well, hello.
I know.
I mean,
But
I could play basketball.
You want to know what's funny?
I could dribble. I'm a very good dribbler.
I was captain of the varsity girls basketball team in high school.
You were.
Oh, I love basketball. But this is why, remember Britney Griner, who went to Russia to make more money? And we talked about this early days, and people, didn't want to hear about it, but it is a problem. Now people say, oh, but the deals are better and the views are more and the tickets are more for the male side of things.
For the tall males.
For the tall males. But it is sexism, pure and simple.
It is sexism.
Get the salaries up, people.
It is heightism and sexism.
Yeah.
And when you put heightism together with sexism, you know what you get?
Heightism. What? Terrible.
Bigotry.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's really awful.
But one other thing on this, which you wrote about a while ago, is the Dartmouth basketball team is now unionized. And that was the first college athletic conglomerate.
May I salute Dartmouth College?
Don't sing
my
the song.
Alma mater.
Don't sing the song, for the love. I think that's it. Did we cover it all?
I think we have, but you tempted me to sing the song.
No, don't do it.
Men of Dartmouth, give a rouse for the college on the hill.
Okay, it was good. The last thing we should mention, actually, is that today is officially 420, which in cannabis culture is celebrated as a day of weed. I don't know exactly how you
I want you to know
say it.
that I was in Oxford University with Bill Clinton, and I did not inhale with Bill.
You too.
We did not inhale
You
together.
too.
Together, Bill and I.
Anyway, 420 for people.
Hey, congratulations.
On what?
On 420.
Oh, thank you.
We will see you next Saturday, and in the meantime, all of you have a safe and happy and a good week.